right, welcome everyone. I'm Tracy Reese. I'm Vice Chair of the CFDA Board of Directors, and I also serve as Chair of CFDA's Black Advisory Board. We're so excited and honored that you've joined us today to discuss CFDA Impact, which will launch this Friday on Creatively, its first phase. As someone who's always and often, I should say not always, but often, or let's say usually, been the only Black woman in the room or at the board table throughout my career, I'm so pleased and proud to be part of this momentous initiative. Our industry has seen such dark days, but I truly feel like that there's a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. And CFDA is dedicated to and uniquely positioned and prepared to make certain we're ready to usher in a brighter, more equitable, more diverse tomorrow for our industry and community. I'd like to commend the Impact team, Ebony Wiggins, Elliot Carlisle, and Kevin Bass, led by our fearless leader and CFDA President, Cassandra Diggs, on the incredible and thorough work they have done and continue to do in laying the groundwork for impact programming, with the support of our chairman, Tom Ford, and our CEO, Stephen Kolb, and the entire team at CFDA and Creatively. And with that, I'd like to introduce our CEO, Stephen Kolb. Take it away, Stephen.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm glad to be here and to participate in this important panel conversation. I've been at CFDA 15 years, and Impact surely ranks among the most important programs that we've launched since I've been at CFDA. The topic diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of our four main priorities for our work this year on everything we do. And so I'm really appreciative and wanted to thank the Black Advisory Board, of course, Creatively, Stacy and Greg and the whole team over there for their support, and the Impact team as well, and Cassandra, our president, for leading this. So again, I'm just happy to be here and to participate, and I pass it on to Cassandra.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Tracy. As everyone knows, I'm Cassandra Diggs, president of the Council of Fashion Designers of America, and I'm glad to welcome you all here today for this conversation. Part of this conversation has been led by the political polarization, the racial unrest, COVID-19 pandemic, and the economic crisis that followed. All of these things have formed a perfect storm to really address the issues of racial inequality in our society. Fashion being the nucleus and the center of many, many of our pop culture and our identity has led to fashion being called out for the lack of diversity within its industry. The CFDA, as an industry-leading institution, has been referenced in many of the conversation. And as an institution, our job is to really promote our brands, promote designers, and to promote fashion, American and otherwise, and the importance that it has in our society. Given its importance, we thought it was crucial that we rise to the occasion and really create a program that tries to address the diversity, inclusivity, and equity issues that exist in our industry. Through that, we have created a program called Impact. Impact is rooted in the purpose of our organization, which is always to strengthen the impact of the designer in American fashion through the global economy. Impact is focused on developing, identifying, connecting, supporting, and nurturing Black and Brown professionals in the fashion industry. And we're doing that with the help not just of our internal impact team, but also of the Black Advisory Board, who I would like to introduce themselves before we begin the conversation. I'll pitch it to Bozoma.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bozoma St. John. I am currently the Chief Marketing Officer at Netflix, Prior to that, I've held senior marketing roles at Apple, at Uber, Endeavor, where I was a chief marketing officer responsible for New York Fashion Week, the shows. And I'm very happy to be a part of this board.
Thank you so much. Stacy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Henderson. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're super excited. I am the U.S. head of e-commerce and digital for TOTS Group, overseeing TOTS.com, Roger Vivian Hogan. I also am the co-founder of Fashion Tech Connects. It's an organization to help women of color find internships in the fashion and beauty field. Before TOTS and before Fashion Tech Connects, I was vice president of marketing at Versace for a while, and also I worked at Farragut Mall.
Thank you, Stacey. Martin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Cooper. I was thinking about how I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm one of those guys that was very fortunate. Fashion picked me, and I've known, what I wanted to do for a very long time. Classically trained, I went to Parsons, worked for Calvin Klein. Calvin was my senior critic at Parsons, and then slid over there. And then I became VP of design for Burberry. And I spent 16 years building the Burberry brand. Then I rebooted another British brand called Belstaff, and built stores, et cetera. And then went on to kind of work here in America as creative director for Land's End. And then most recently, I just launched my own brand in the home space called the Punctilious Mr. P's Place Card Company. But I am super excited to be here and to share thoughts and wisdom with everyone.
Thank you, Martin. Before we get into the conversation, I want to remind everyone that there will be a Q&A at the end of the conversation, and to please put your questions into the Q&A chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can.
We forgot Samira to introduce her.
Samira,
okay.
Last but not least, the finest of them all, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you today. My name is Samira Nasser, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar. And it has been an incredible honor to sit on this board with these incredible individuals. And I look forward to this time that we have together today.
Thank you, Samira. And I didn't mean to forget you. It's been quite a journey. The Black Advisory Board is here to guide us, to shore us in our commitment to addressing the industry's role in dismantling systemic racism. And before we get into this conversation, I just want to sort of lay the groundwork of how we got here. On June 4th of 2020, our board, led by our chairman, Tom Ford, released a statement of declaration to the industry. What they promised and what they had hoped to do was, one, to create a talent directory that would connect Black talent to brands looking to hire. Two, create a mentorship internship program that would connect Black talent to brands looking to develop. Three, to get DEI training for its membership. And four, to donate to organizations that mission was centered around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Since that statement, CFDA has given funding to the NAACP and other organizations that support DEI. We've had workshops for our members around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we will continue to do those. And now we get to the other two most important initiatives, the talent directory and the mentorship program. As you know, when this happened in 2020, the racial unrest, many brands, many companies posted Black boxes and also made statements and promises of what they were to do. And the CFDA wanted to take the time to figure out what the real solutions were, how we could really be helpful. We took the time to track the comments, read the post, and get together with the Black Advisory Board to craft something that we think will be the start of change. Impact is a program really centered around changing the trajectory of Black and Brown professionals in our industry, giving them voice, giving them visibility, allowing them to enter into these rooms as their whole selves. And so I think before we get into talking specifically about impact, it's really important to talk about how race really impacts fashion and the role that it plays. So I would like to pose the first question. I will let the group decide who would like to answer first, but how do we see fashion influencing the conversation around race? Who wants to take that first? Bose?
Sure. Well, here's the real impact for me on race and fashion, which is that I'm actually going to broaden it out a little further, right? Because I think what happens is that sometimes we become so insular that we think that it's only affecting one industry, when in fact we're actually talking about the entirety of pop culture. This is not a conversation limited to fashion, although fashion has a high influence in it. That the issues relating to fashion not only impact this industry, but every other. And so to think that the issues we are talking about now are somewhat small or only as it applies to those who are inside of the business is a mistake. That we are actually talking about a global and cultural phenomenon that we have to pay attention to. And so the decisions we make here, the way we move in culture here, the way that we change the culture here impacts every other industry. And so it is entirely important and absolutely necessary for us to pay attention to the way that race and fashion are intertwined, and how we're going to be able to change the behavior that we've seen for so long. I think I'll speak for my fellow board members here that each of us are committed in our own way. I mean, even in the introductory session, I was applauding inside, maybe not outside, but inside, at the impact of each one of the people that we see here. And so if we are a small segment of the larger group, of the 200 or so people who are even in this room right now, who all have influences in their own ways within the industry, I mean, how powerful must we be that we can actually change the way that not only the way that we are integrating and interacting with fashion, but then the entirety of pop culture. That's actually what we are here to do. And so I don't look at sitting on this board or having this conversation as a singular mission. I actually see it as a much bigger effort.
I love that. Is there anyone who wants to elaborate or add something to what Post said so eloquently?
I would just say that fashion is a reflection of our time, and to omit anyone from this conversation, then we're not doing a job of capturing this moment. And it has gone on far too long. And I think that we need to break down the walls and invite people in so that there is humanity associated with identity, and that box of other, we can just get rid of it once and for all, and we can all just be our whole selves in any room. And I think that is the goal. Every industry, fashion, we're talking about fashion today, but any industry should look as diverse and as vibrant as the city streets. And right now that's not the case in what we do. And we have the opportunity to change that. And I'm very excited about what lies ahead, and having that be part of fashion story and reflecting that truth.
And I'd also like to add that, fashion has so often been about appropriating, imagery and inspiration and fabrication and pattern and color and spirit from cultures all over the world. And, you know, it's such an awakening for our industry to realize that that's not cool, you know, and it's just been the status quo forever. And, you know, it's such a wake-up call to say, let people express who they are, their unique culture, let them speak for themselves. You shouldn't be appropriating someone else's culture for your financial gain. And it's interesting how this conversation is just exploding around appropriation, you know, recently, like the past few years, when it's been a huge issue in our industry for so long. So, you know, this is also an opportunity, you know, for every culture to express themselves and to be able to be applauded and amplified for who they are, instead of waiting for the stakeholders to, you know, sort of steal their souls and sell it for profit. So we're waking up in so many ways.
Absolutely. You know, there have been times in history, you know, the ebbs and flows of Black liberation, when people are acutely aware of what's going on in our culture and with our oppression. And, you know, we saw it in the 60s, we've seen it decade after decade. What makes this time unique? And how do we move past something that seems like, yet again, a moment, to making it a movement? Stacey?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. I think the first thing is to know that for me, and I always say this is not a fad. I think a lot of times, especially when things come up, it's almost like, let's Band-Aid approach this, or let's have a percentage of this or whatever. But I think it's really about understanding that this is not a fad, understanding the necessity of respecting the culture, understand the necessity of having Black voices in the room at the board table, and making sure that it's representation through and through, from the business side to the creative side, at all levels of the organization. And I think the other part of that is making sure that when, especially as companies look and try to approach this, especially when, like what happened this summer with George Floyd, and back to the Black square thing, stop trying to check a box. And I think that's what really it's about, is stop trying to say you did something because of something just to move on. But you have to understand that it should be much more of a concrete conversation at a concrete level. And it's not just about, oh, we hired a D&I person, or we hired one Black person and now we're done because we know we've done it, or we put up our Black square. I think it's about like really moving away from like the superficial part of it, and really going deep into it and understanding it's something permanent. And it should be a topic of conversation 365, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and not just at one moment when something happens.
Because so often in fashion, you know, we run on trends, you
Yes.
know, and everyone is on this trend right now. And I think all of us have a wholesome fear that this will be treated as a trend that has a beginning and an end. And there cannot be an end for any people, you know, when we're talking about equality, when we're talking about equity. There is no end. It's something that we always have to keep front and center, that we always have to talk about, that we always have to work toward. And it's so imperative that we keep this conversation going beyond, you know, this trendy moment when we're seeing, you know, Black and brown faces everywhere. There has to be balance, and it has to be ongoing.
Absolutely. I would also add to that, I think keeping the momentum is really going to take having all of the different organizations that have formed continuing their work, realizing that, you know, Black, brown, other people of color, we're not monolithic, and that we all have a place in this conversation, and really, you know, pressing the industry to engage with all of the groups equally and give us all the space to work with them. So it's not choosing, you know, CFDA versus Black in Fashion Council versus Race Fashion. It's really figuring out how do we bring all these groups in to get the work done. And I think that's what will keep the momentum. I think the more of us that are in this space, the likelihood will increase that this will not be a trend.
I think also, if I may add, that this is that moment where brands need to pay attention, to really listen to what's happening. Brands who will embrace diversity. And what I mean by diversity is diversity, you know, in the obvious sense, but also diversity of thought. Brands who embrace will win in the long term. Brands who do not embrace will lose. And I think from an economic point of view, this is that moment to keep your ear to the ground. And if there's my one takeaway would be pay attention, brands. The customer is out there, she's voting, he's voting.
I would also say the moment that we're living in is just driven by connectivity. Like, we're all together with these 200 people, right? And so if you think back historically, you had to rally somewhere and then it was on the evening news or got reported in the paper. But this is really driven by people, right? Where the accountability comes from people on Instagram, social media. And I think that's what's driving this too. It's making leadership hold true to what commitments they're making. And if we're not, they're going to hold us accountable for that. And so it's really, I think, powerful kind of energy coming from people. And that might be a little bit different too, the technology that connects us all.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Martin, you're talking about economics and how it's going to reflect on brands and their success, but it also reflects on brands and their level of creativity and their output. Through time, we've seen fashion reflect some of the movements that have been going on, whether it was the 60s and the Black Power movement and some of the fashions that came out of that. Do you think that there's going to be, or do you see now any sort of fashions coming out of this movement? Have you seen any statements being made to reflect what's going on now?
I think it's a great question. I'm not sure if fashion will look different in a sense, but I think that having, you know, when the creative process is not of one singular mindset, that enriches the dialogue and that enriches the creativity. So whatever it evolves into will be far richer than just one track of thought or, you know, that creative thinking. I'm not sure. I would be very curious, Samira, to hear your point of view. What you're hearing from what you're seeing.
No, I agree with you. I don't know if there's one, you know, if we'll be able to look back on this and sort of connect the dots between the fashion of this moment and this movement. But I will say that, you know, and even in going back to the last question, I think we can't forget that sort of, you know, the arc of success will have different metrics. And I think we need to allow space for all of them. And I think the fact that we're here and we're committed to this, I just don't see it going back. And that to me is like, that's a victory. I mean, look at how far we've already come in creating this. And I think another measure of success and of the outcome of all this is exactly to Martin's point, just sort of the creative conversation. In inviting more people in, I always liken it to a dinner party. It's just livelier. It's more vibrant. It's it's more surprising. And so that output and you know, that is in the long term, and we'll get to see that, you know, years from now when we get to, you know, see the results of all of this work and see all of these people, you know, coming in and being able to have a seat at the table and what that will produce. And I think it will only amplify, and I think it will only promote more creative discussion and output, really.
Absolutely. Is anyone want to say anything else before I move on? Well, all of this advancement that's happening in this moment with careers and all of the opportunities that are now opening up, I would like to know a little bit more about your careers. And what I would love to know is, what has been career defining moments in your life, and how have they lent to your advancement?
Who wants to go?
I mean, I'll start. Career defining moment for me was just my first internship, to be honest. You know, it set me on a path, and I got coffees. I think I moved someone in a van. I got dry cleaning. I did all of those things, but I also was on set, and I also was in a room when people were making decisions about, you know, magazines and making them. And it set me on my path. And it also, you know, I've always had a strong work ethic, and I think that's something that we need to keep talking about, because it's not just about having a passion, it's about really being committed to it and working hard. So I would say my internship, my first internship, and my willingness to work hard are really what have helped me and carried me and sustained me.
You know, for me, I think career defining moments, the first was when my dad said to me when I was 23 years old, he said, "You need to do your own thing." And I literally looked at him like, "What? Really? What are you talking about?" And he was right, though, but it made me, it switched my focus from being solely a creative to embarking on a career as an entrepreneur and a businesswoman. And I had to, you know, write a business plan. I had to, you know, do all the functions and serve in all the functions of a fledgling, you know, company and brand. And I had to wear all of those hats, you know. And when we talk about work ethic and passion, and, you know, what are you willing to give to, for, you know, to live your passion, that's really a huge defining moment, and a question that, you know, we always have to ask ourselves. But, you know, when we were at Parsons, and Martin knows this very well, you know, we were told you have to eat, sleep, and drink fashion, you know, and if you weren't up for that challenge, then this wasn't the industry for you. And, you know, you sort of, you know, we were kind of shaken when we heard it, because we know, you know, we knew it was true. And I think, you know, for any of us who have survived in this industry, it gets proven out over and over again. I mean, you know, the second career defining moment for me was launching my new brand, Hope for Flowers, and deciding, you know, that I wanted to be a responsible designer, that I wanted to, you know, create more sustainably, and that I wanted to, you know, be more part of my community and create opportunities for others in my community. And that's, you know, kind of my career coming full circle, and me coming back to Detroit to be able to share that, you know, here in my hometown. It's incredibly gratifying, you know, but it's like square one all over again, but with so much more wisdom and so much more gratitude, you know. So I think that, you know, we keep having these incredible opportunities. And I think that's why so many of us are in love with fashion. You know, every day is another opportunity, something you can create, something beautiful that you can enjoy, something you can share. And, you know, so I think we keep having these opportunities to have defining moments, and that keeps us going. It keeps us in.
I can jump. That was awesome, Tracy. You're so I will say a couple things. I think I have a few defining moments. The first one, I think the most important one, was to believe in myself and just realize that I could actually be in the fashion industry. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Kansas City. From a very humble, in parentheses, poor family. And that, that I did all these opportunities, like you would see all these things happening. You would watch all the fashion shows and it seemed like another language, like speaking Greek to me or something that I couldn't touch. And it wasn't until I remember I was talking to someone in Kansas City saying, I really want to get in fashion. And she looked at me and she said, why not? Someone should work in fashion. Why shouldn't it be you? And that was all it took for me to say, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to at least try, right? And so what I wound up doing, I decided to take a chance. I was working for a gift wrapping paper company or something. And I decided to go to Milan, get my graduate degree, and I got my first job with Ferragamo. And it was so hard for me because I was just learning the language, so I was sounding like a 2-year-old. Of course, the only person, Black person, of course, I was in Florence, Italy. And it was quite interesting because I think I learned culturally how to work in a different culture. I learned a different language. And I was in the industry in Italy, so I was excited about that. And then the last thing I have to say was probably my years at Versace. When I came over to the United States, after being away out of the country for 7 years. And for some reason, I think every time there's a change, there's always this like anticipation. And as Samira and Tracy said, the prodigious amount of effort it takes to make it, right? So even though I was in Italy, coming to New York, I'm like, you have this thing like, oh my God, it's New York, it's super tough. I was in Italy, drinking cappuccinos and, whatever. And here I am in New York City where it's tougher. And coming here, I think, and being able to relate to a designer that all my life, like Donatella Versace, right? It's like, when you're a child, it was, you're from Kansas City, that was so cool. And being able to work with her successfully on the creative side, but also with the commercial people and knowing how to navigate that, where you could get sort of respect on both ends for me, and them just really allowing me to launch social media, launch digital, and all that was quite, great. So those were my different.
For me, I think there were a lot of moments, but I think for me, my biggest moment, which really changed my life, was when I was a kid. I had a cousin who lived in New York City. Originally, I'm from South Carolina. And she said, you should look into the school called Parsons. And so I said, I knew about Pratt because my grandmother graduated from Pratt in 1922 in what was the precursor to fashion design. Wow. And, but I'd never heard of Parsons. And so she said, I think you should look into the school. And so my mother wrote the school a letter and said, my son, he's sketching, he's, doing this and that. What do we do with him? And the school wrote back and said, please send us examples of his work. And so, this is, pre, PDFing and emailing. You just put sketches in an envelope and we mailed it off. And about 2 months later, she got a phone call. And Tracy, you will remember, this is Ann Keegi on the other side of the phone. And so she ran the fashion department at Parsons at that moment. And so Ann said, we love Martin's work. We'd love for him to attend the summer program. This is a college level summer program. And Mom said, great, we're in. And then it sunk in and she said, but he's only 14. And Ann Keegi said, he's only 14. And she said, Martin's only 14. And so they negotiated and negotiated. And finally, I was allowed to attend the summer program at Parsons. I was the youngest that they had ever had, given, you know, special permission. And I realized at that moment that, you know, I thought it was so unique and creative and blah, blah, blah. I kept sketchbooks, you know, and I go to Parsons and I realize that everyone else is doing exactly the same thing. And it was a wonderful life affirmation. And the second part of that was I learned that summer, I had a woman who became very influential in my life, Marie Essex. I'm looking at Tracy again. I became kind of like this woman's kind of surrogate son. She was the one who knew how old I was, you know, that summer. She took me under her wing. Eventually, Marie got me on the board of governors at Parsons, introduced me to Calvin after he was my senior critic. The importance of mentors in your life. To this day, I always have mentors in my life, you know, whether it's a Rosemary Bravo, who is CEO of Burberry, among others. I find that fashion is a very complex landscape to navigate on your own. And to have that kind of sounding board of mentors helps, you know, one get through it in the best of ways. So, yeah.
Mine happened in a hotel room at the Waldorf Astoria with my boss, but not for dubious reasons. I was just out of college working for the American Cancer Society in New Jersey, and he was the president of the whole state. And the American Cancer Society used to have these national meetings where all the states would come in to the Waldorf. And I was, and still a little bit shy and kind of awkward, new in a job. And there was something about me that he liked. He invited me to come and be like the bartender, the busboy, set up the room, break down the room. And he really, to Martin's point, he pulled me in and he took a liking to me. And it's kind of, I guess, maybe what we call allyship now in a way. And, you know, when we talk about that in our PVH report, the state of diversity in fashion, where Black and brown people in the industry don't really get that level of allyship, and something that certainly, you know, Impact wants to focus on with mentorship and apprenticeships. But it was just being given that opportunity to be in this room with all of these important people that gave me confidence to feel like I belonged in the job. And I've always remembered that moving forward through my career.
Amazing.
I'll bring in the end here, which is that mine is maybe I'll take a different approach, being on the receiving end of fashion. Because my defining moment, or one of them, was on the Apple keynote stage. You know, Steve Jobs, of course, as we all know, built that stage where new product and new tech is unveiled. And at my time there, I was building Apple Music, and I was the first Black person to present tech on that stage. And no shade to the Black turtleneck or jeans. I decided not to wear the uniform, but instead wore Mimi Plange, a very body-hugging, salmon-colored, beautiful creation. And for me, it was an incredible moment because I was able to bring my full self into a space, as I think infamously known for sweatshirts and hoodies and white boys who are not so friendly. And so for me, that moment defined my career in tech. It defined my career as an executive, and certainly was a coming out of sorts for all of my femininity and difference, and certainly celebrated in that moment.
Incredible.
That's an awesome story.
So many great stories. And so many themes throughout. There are definitely significant barriers to entry for many who want to enter into fashion. I think you all reflect a level of excellence, and intelligence, and determination that's needed to succeed in the industry. For those that also have those same attributes, but yet still cannot break in, what do you think why isn't there greater representation? What do you think some of the challenges are, and what would you like to see targeted?
I mean, I just think we need to bring back internships, to be honest. I think it's such, that's how you get your start. That's, yes, mentorship is so important also, but internships where young people can, try things and be in environments that are new and see where they, could imagine themselves. You don't know what to dream about until you see it. And a lot of times you don't know that these jobs exist until you're in a room, and then you're like, wow, someone does that. Like somebody does, there's such a thing. My whole life I had my head in a magazine from my earliest memories. I still didn't know that there was someone that styled those pictures. It didn't occur to me. Like I understood a photographer, these are things, but I didn't realize that there was an editor. So until I was in a room in a magazine and I was like, wow, that's what that person does. And I could sort of imagine myself in that role. It kind of checked a lot of boxes for me and my, how I wanted to sort of be in a creative field. And so I think internships are really, really, really important. And they're important because that then allows people to, develop a pool of talent. And then when there's an opening, that's who they hire. And that's where you start. That's where you start your career.
I second that, Samara. So important. And I think it's so exciting that the Impact program, will be focused on providing paid internships, because for so many young people who want to get in the industry, the idea of coming to New York, being able to get to New York, being able to stay in New York, to pay for food in New York, let alone, go into a job, public transportation, whatever it is that gets you there. It's a tremendous expense. And a lot of times only people with means can afford to do an unpaid internship. So paid internships are everything. I mean, at my old brand, we had a huge internship program in the summers, and I cannot tell you how many interns I ended up hiring. Because you get to know someone, they get to know your business, you see that they can be a great fit, a great asset to the team, you understand their work ethic, you get their personality, all of those things that could be an impediment in hiring someone you don't know, and if I saw, something in an intern, it's just like, okay, this person has it, they've got that work ethic, they've got common sense, because that can be rare. And it's like, I want that person on our team, and I want to be able to help build that person so that they can have a real career in this industry. So I 100% agree, internships are incredibly important.
Absolutely. Would third that to say how important internships are, and more specifically paid internships as, a barrier to entry. We don't all come from the most advantageous socioeconomic background. And for many, it's important to get compensation for the work in order to exist and be in the spaces that they can learn from. Given that, we have created this impact program, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Part of the impact program is to create access and awareness around opportunities. And for those brands who join this platform, part of their subscription fee is going into a paid internship matching fund, so that we can facilitate paid internship opportunities for those students and those entering into the business who are interested. Given that we're doing that for Impact, I'd like to talk a little bit about what you think the value add is of the Impact program to the industry, and why you think people should really participate and be a part of it as a brand or as talent. I will kick that to Tracy.
God, it's a plus all around, Cassandra. You know, when we talk about, you know, obviously our directory, people having the opportunity to show their work, to be exposed to an audience that hasn't had the opportunity to see them and what they're about. That's huge. And then Creatively platform will provide that opportunity. The idea of mentorship and what we've been discussing in terms of programming through impact is incredibly important, but it's, you know, it has to be, there has to be a structure to it, you know, and what we're planning for impact will make it easier for people who want to mentor. Out of the, you know, almost 500 members of CFDA, there's so much talent, there's so much expertise, there's so much experience. And a lot of people are looking for ways to share what they've learned, you know, and to have a good conduit to find, you know, all of these worthy people who need that mentorship, and to have some structure to it, you know, to create these relationships. I think CFDA can play an incredibly important role. You know, so that's a huge plus. And one of the things I've always loved about CFDA and being a member of CFDA is there were always opportunities to give back. And it was structured by CFDA so that it was easy for we as members to be a part of doing good work, you know, and like the burden of organizing it and structuring it and creating strategy for it was lifted. So I think that that's a huge plus for the industry that CFDA is undertaking, creating this programming and framework.
Thank you, Tracy. I know that Bose has to jump off at 5, so I wanted to give her a final opportunity if she has any last words, but want to thank her for participating, thank her for her contribution to the Black Advisory Board, and we look forward to continue work with her. Bose, are there any last words?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. No, really, it is fully my honor to serve on this board because I want to make sure that I continue pushing us and this industry in the ways in which I talked about in the intro question, you know, which is that how can we make sure that other industries feel as responsible for the health of fashion as fashion feels? You know, that this is not just a issue that affects fashion, but like I said, in fact, impacts so many other industries. You know, today in the seat I sit at Netflix, we could argue about the impact fashion has on Hollywood and on productions, right? When we have titles like Emily in Paris, regardless of what you think of the show, or any others that are storytelling. I think it's important to tell the history of fashion, you know, and how do we bring subject matter for any of the stories which have been forgotten in our history? You know, that we all have the responsibility to be able to impact not just our future, but not to lose our past. You know, I think that's a very important aspect to consider as we think about how we continue to evolve the industry and the impact that BIPOC people have in this business. And so for me, as a contributor to this board, I take it, the responsibility very seriously that the conversation that doesn't end in fashion, but that somehow I can reach across to other spaces in tech, in entertainment, to make sure that we don't forget this conversation here too. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You have a good evening and we'll see you again soon. Thank you, Bose. To my other panelists, let's continue on with this wonderful conversation. So, you know, let's continue talking about what we think is so important about impact. Tracy, you led us with talking about the importance of the internships and also creating a structure that people can access. Is there anything anyone wants to add? Martin?
I think probably one of the most important things is building relationships. And I think the platform will allow that dialogue to happen and to take place and to start building lines of communication between talent and organizations, but perhaps even more importantly, between individual to individual. And so, I know the end goal, obviously, is to place BIPOC talent within an organization, but I'm also hoping that they use this as a network to connect with themselves and each other and, start forming those relationships.
I think the reach of impact is also important because it's an open access platform on Creatively for anybody, any talent, right? And so we traditionally look for people within the fashion schools or in certain communities, but you could be a designer in South Dakota and have talent and be able to join the platform and be linked and connected to companies, big companies that are looking for someone to hire. So I think the platform that Creatively's created and our ability to integrate impact into that and that broad open access is really important because that's always the challenge, right? We're looking for people in the same places all the time. And now we're able to open that up in a big way. And because I'm sure someone on this panel is from South Dakota and wants to represent themselves on impact. So I think that's the great thing about impact is the reach.
I would also add that it's not just the reach. It's like it's business. It can be, it's not just creative in fashion. It's not just designers and, it's on the business end. It could be marketing. It could be, it can be anyone who is curious about this industry who wants to participate. They can find the thing that resonates with them and their curiosity and their, educational trajectory. And I think that's really exciting because that just opens it up even more.
Exactly. I was going to mention, I think for me, it's about discovery. And I think that it's super important because we always, you always hear in the industry, the usual suspects people go to, right? Or, oh, I didn't know this person existed. Or, I've had people call me, there's a position open and we would love for a woman of color or someone to take the position. I think the fact that it's a place where people can discover all these hidden gems, I think is going to be so amazing from a company point of view. And then from the mentorship side, I just think that there are so many people, Black people, not Black people, that feel, especially now, they want to do something. And like Tracy said, to actually have a place to go. I mean, I've had so many bosses after this summer saying, what can I do? What can we do? And I think that look, we're providing something for you. We're providing this tool for you to use how you see fit and for you to feel like you're actually making a difference.
Yeah. And I think too, we should also, let people know we are interested in the health of the whole industry. So it's not just about designers and creatives. It's also about people who are interested in the business of fashion. You could be, an executive in the making. You could, have your eye on the C-suite. You could be a technical designer. You could be in production. It's about the whole industry. And we would like all of that talent to be highlighted on the platform on Creatively.
Amazing. Well, we adjourned the conversation to get to the questions, but we certainly will be having these conversations a lot more often with the community, with the Black Advisory Board, with the Impact team. We look forward to talking with the brands who are going to be on the platform, the talent that's going to be on the platform. So we will continue these conversations in the near future. But I'll get to some of the Q&A that we've gotten since the conversation started. First question. Stephen, lucky you. Stephen, the audience would like to know, how does it make you feel to be the person that serves as the door opener for African Americans to have this opportunity in the fashion industry?
Well, I'm not sure I'm that person, but look, I mean, in my work, I've always, I'm not a fashion person. I'm a not-for-profit person. CFDA is a not-for-profit. So And I've always only worked in not-for-profit. And so my approach professionally has always been, what can I do to help or to change? And even though my experience has been kind of more social services in fashion as a business, it's still the same principle, right? And so I think it's really, the question is like, how does it feel for CFDA, right? I mean, how does it feel for Cassandra and the impact team, Tom and the board and the Black Advisory Board? You know, I know one of the questions we were going to maybe ask, and it probably based on time got pushed to the side, but it was about uncomfortable conversations, right? I'm the only white person on this panel. And, you know, and I'm having conversations a lot where I'm not really sure sometimes if I'm saying the right thing or if my opinion or approach really matters. And so I think it's about trusting the process and trusting the environment. And that's really what's opening doors is my belief in the CFDA and the power of the CFDA, but also just trusting the process and really leaning into people who have the experiences and the knowledge to really help us create change.
It's interesting too, Stephen, that, you know, you mentioned like you're the only white person on this panel, and, you know, feeling unsure, you know, am I saying the right thing? Am I, you know, am I feeling this? Am I being empathetic? Am I, you know, all these questions. And I think for a lot of us, we're so used to being the only Black person on the panel or in the room.
Yeah.
And that, you know, historically has been what we've had to face all day, every day throughout our careers, you know? So I think even being able to speak to that perspective of, okay, how does it feel, you know, and how does it sometimes disempower you, you know, and to have empathy, you know, with others who are, you know, having to experience that as a way of being. I think it's an interesting moment, you know. So, you know, keep being that man.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep showing up. That's what you need to do. Just keep showing up. Martin, did you want to add anything to that before I go to the next question?
Probably directly to you, Stephen. Keep the dialogue going, right? Don't be afraid to speak. Keep it going, because that is truly the exchange. You know, it has to be back and forth. It's not one way.
Absolutely, and that's one of the guiding principles of impact is nuance. Really setting the stage for uncomfortable conversations, sensitive exchanges, but it will lead to shifting attitudes. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to shift attitudes and ways of thinking that have been embedded for quite some time. And so the only way to do that is to sit in a lot of discomfort, not just for us, but for everyone. Who has to be part of the dialogue. So I think, you know, that's an important thing to do. We'll be better for it. And, you know, we just have to grin and bear it a little bit, because that's what it's going to take. And Stacey, if you want to add anything, or I'll go to the next question. Okay. So the next question we have here from Therese Brown. I'm excited to hear more from each of you about some specific ways impact will feature new designers via CFDA within their own organizations. The same Black designers continue to benefit from support from fashion gatekeepers in all aspects of the industry. As a business-minded designer who fought to get my products into stores without much guidance or support from fashion gatekeepers, I know firsthand that more mentoring, grants, networking, store placement, store collaboration, sales strategy needs to be provided for those Black designers that we typically do not see on sites like CFDA. How will Impact offer support in these areas? Tracy, I'll go to you first.
Thanks, Cassandra. You know, it's interesting. I think there are avenues for exposure that have opened up this year. And, you know, Runway 360 is one of those. And I think that that's something that, is it Teresa, should definitely explore for her business. I understand that feeling of the gatekeepers, you know, keeping us out, you know, and it's like, who do I know that can get me past so-and-so? Because she's not excited to see me, you know, when we have those moments, and she won't give me an appointment, and, you know, so-and-so won't come see the line. They won't give me, you know, the grace of a view. And, you know, to some extent, we all have to deal with that, you know, and hopefully it's not just people of color that, you know, are being held back, but we know that it's largely us. And, you know, that's, it's not fair and it's not right, but, you know, we have to be persistent. You know, when I've approached a closed door, I definitely will find a window. You know, my passion is that great. My desire to succeed is that great. And it sounds like Teresa also has that passion and desire, and she's found a way to build a viable business, even though the gatekeepers have not swung open the gate and welcomed her with open arms. So, you know, we always have to persevere, but we're definitely trying to you know, get the key to those gates and take the door off, basically, so that everyone is welcome. We all deserve, you know, to be seen, you know, and we can't control a store's buy. We can't control what a buyer thinks, and we cannot control if they will or will not give us an appointment, but we're going to keep being loud about it and keep amplifying the voices of great creatives, so that those people who are, you know, kind of tough to approach and break down, you know, eventually they'll have to get with the program.
Wonderfully said. Samira, do you want to add anything to that?
The only thing I would add is, you know, I'm hoping that impact will create community and network. And I think that if you can't get in, create a network, create your own community and start there. Sort of take in where you are and look around. Who can you lock arms with? Who can you sort of lock arms with to move forward with? And maybe it's not over there. Maybe it's just kind of right where you are. And I'm hoping, you know, to answer that question of what impact can do, I'm hoping it brings connectivity and community. So people, Black and brown people, can lock arms with like-minded thinkers and build community to create change together.
And we're used to having to do that. You know, a lot of, you know, Black designers have just found their way to their own customer one way or another, period. You know, I have direct consumer, I'm building these relationships. I have a killer Instagram account, and, you know, and great engagement, and, you know, we find a way. And one thing I would want to say to Teresa too is focus on what you do have and what you do well, and put all of your energy there, you know, and definitely take advantage of the opportunities that impact will offer. But you've got so much going for you already. And I think when we're concerned about what we don't have, if I'm jealous of another designer getting attention or whatever, then I'm not focused on what I have and what I can make happen for myself and my business. So that's always super important. You know, we have to keep our eyes on our own prize, because your success will come in its own unique way. It doesn't have to and should not look like anyone else's.
Great advice. Great advice.
Great advice.
Be you.
And that may tie into the next question. What's your process to identify and recruit Black and brown creatives for this new initiative?
I think you should answer that one, Cassandra.
I was going to say that.
I was trying to moderate, but of course, I'm happy to answer it. I think to Samira's point, we're locking arms and we're not gatekeeping, right? So we're allowing those who want to be on the platform to join the platform. Talent is welcome to join the platform. There is nothing keeping you from joining the platform. We are not gatekeeping the platform. We would like you to join the platform. We encourage you to join the platform so that you do have the visibility to brands. Of course, brands will have their own aesthetic and make some choices that they need to, but we will also be engaging with brands to really change the dynamic around how they interpret talent and where they place value, so that they are looking sort of deeper into candidates and really trying to select what doesn't seem to be the norm. So again, we're not setting up any criteria and eliminating anyone. So you're more than welcome to join. And for brands, we're trying to help them navigate a better understanding of what talent is and things that they should be including in their talent pool from their selection.
Just to expand on the brand side, just in our office, there's not a person who isn't reaching out, making phone calls, emailing. We've cast the net very wide on the corporate brand side, and the way it's set up for brands, it's flexible, right? You could have a lot of jobs. You might just have one internship that is available. And this week is an important week because we're launching Impact, but it doesn't end this week. Right? This is continuous work. So while we'll launch with a good number of brands and creatives on the site, this is going to grow and keep growing. And so it's an ongoing commitment. And we're all like pushing and working very hard to make sure that if you are someone, whether it be a business person or a creative coming onto the site, that the opportunities will exist. We talk a lot about Cfda, which will be 60 next year. We have authority and we're persuasive. And so I think the experience when you come on is going to be a good experience because we're working hard to make it a good experience.
And I think too, we need everyone that's interested and on this webinar to spread the word. I mean, if you know a wonderfully talented person who needs this exposure, who could benefit from it, please spread the word. We want a really healthy, diverse, extensive pool of talent on the platform. So please spread it out to your whole network.
Absolutely. I think we have one more question before we go. And the question from Visionary Society is, what do you feel CFDA can do to aid in the elimination of the wealth and knowledge gap, not just in fashion, but society? Any takers on that one?
Well, I mean, fashion, as we talked about, is a big part of pop culture, and fashion has itself, a metaphor. We have a runway to the world and a spotlight on the work we've done. That there's a spotlight on what we do, and I think Tracy can remember. We had an amazing Planned Parenthood campaign where we brought a lot of attention to Planned Parenthood during Fashion Week. It was right after Donald Trump was elected president. And we really created a visibility for an important organization and with an important mission. And so people come to fashion, they seek it out. And so I think that the voice we have, and Baz talked about it earlier, really can not just change what fashion is about, but really can change society and other businesses as well. And so, and it's not a spotlight we have to beg for. It just comes to fashion. It's just there. So it's being intelligent and in harnessing it in a way that is positive and creates change. And I think we've done that successfully over the years at CFDA. And I think we're going to have great success doing the same thing here with Impact.
Absolutely. Another question. How do we be good allies?
I'll jump in on that. In conversations and dialogue that I've had, over these past months, one thing that constantly, I think, comes up about allyship, and that is access. What you may think is nothing to you or so, insignificant is a huge push for someone else. Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it whatever it is? Can you meet with this person for 30 minutes and have coffee? And so, from my perspective, I think it's about access and how you can share that in ways that make meaningful impact to others' lives.
And just to jump in there, Martin, I think that it's almost like when we start having these discussions, or when I was thinking about everything that was happening, it was almost like, what's my commitment and what's my role in this, right? And I sort of have, I can't, there's so much to do, right? And like Tracy said, it's very complex, but me being on the business side and the e-commerce side, I decided that where I will focus is really looking at getting as many Black and brown executives in fashion companies. I can't wait to, open up women's wear, whatever publication, and see, CEOs and publishers and all these things. So I think for me, it's about like, this is my commitment, and then how do I act on that? And how do I make sure that, I think it was Samira's article about pulling people up, and it's a constant thing, and it's constant. It is constant. And, I know we're all super crazy busy, but, we have to, like Martin said, we have to know that it's not one dimensional, and every single dimension to the puzzle is something that could really help someone go a long way.
Absolutely. All right, final question. How would the CFDA work to build trust with Black and brown creatives and professionals?
Is that a you, Cassandra?
We can start with me. For me, I think it's about a level of transparency and a level of doing what you say you're going to do. So if we say we're going to create a platform and we're going to put talent on there, and we're going to put brands on there, then that's what we have to do. If we say we're going to engage with brands and engage with talent and create a network and a dialogue, then that's what we have to do. I think, it's going to take time of, doing what we say we're going to do. And over time, that's how you build the trust. So I hope that people will be open to allowing us to, do this work, and will participate in the work, because the ultimate benefit is to the Black and brown creatives and professionals who really have said loud and clear, we want to be part of the industry. We want to hold higher position in the industry. We want to be decision makers. We want to be in the C-suite. We want to be in the boardroom. So we're committing to work with you, and we want you to commit to work with us. And I think that's how you build the trust.
But also, in addition, it's to enrich the entire fashion experience, And so I think, yes, our focus is on, Black and brown people, but it also is to enrich the white experience as well, having Black and brown people in that mix.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question we didn't address that came up, and maybe it leads to that, what you said, Martin, something about specificity and why we're targeting Black and brown creatives as opposed to, a larger segment. Of course, there are other underserved groups within fashion. Why are we targeting Black and Brown creatives and professionals at this time?
I think we've got the greatest distance to close with Black and Brown creatives. When we look at statistics, when we look at figures, when we look at income, when we look at access, when we look at equity in general, when we look at our place in this country as Black and Brown people, we're always at the bottom of the scale, always. Access to healthcare, access to income, access to nutritious food, the list goes on and on. So we're starting with Black and Brown because we're at the bottom of the scale, always, okay? It's the furthest distance to travel to reach equity. So that's where we have to begin. But we care about everybody. It takes all of us to move this industry, to flavor this industry, to make this industry successful. But we've got to start somewhere, and we have to have a focused beginning, and we have to learn from the work that we're doing, how we can improve it, then we can expand it.
Absolutely. I think the intensity of the situation surrounding Black professionals and brown professionals is significant. I think it's a situation of, all houses are not currently on fire. And so we need to focus on a house that's burning. And so that's what we're doing. But it doesn't preclude anyone from joining the directory. You're welcome to join. It's open to everyone. But, the directory is going to put focus and effort into connecting Black and Brown talent to these brands and making sure that these brands are giving Black and Brown talent the opportunity and the chance to apply for these positions and get these positions. So everyone is welcome, but we are going to be specifically targeting Black and Brown creatives and professionals. And we hope that those who are not Black and Brown professionals will support that effort and realize that we need that allyship. And their voice is an important voice. Their silence is not good to the situation, and it's not a solution. They need to speak up, and they need to support their fellow creatives that are Black and Brown and make sure they get those opportunities as well. And that's what we're doing. Any last words before we close out? Any more questions? Okay, it seems like we don't have any more questions. But in closing, I would like to say, this is an amazing opportunity that we've all been provided. We get to help lead the industry into a transformative future where we will all have a seat at the table. We will all have voice and visibility. And, this equity will lead to equality, which is ultimately what we all want. And so I'm excited to take the journey. I know that my fellow Black Advisory Board members and the Impact team is ready for the journey. I know that the CFDA team is excited for the journey. And I hope that the industry will also have that same excitement and show up and support. So we leave you here today. We're going to put up on the screen a QR code for brands and talent who want to join the platform. Over the next couple of weeks, we will continue reaching out to you, the talent, through social and other pipelines, and we'll reach out to the brands. And we hope that you'll answer the call. We really, really do, because we're all in this together, and this is something that we're all going to solve together. So we thank you all for showing up this evening to hear us in our first conversation. We hope that you will come back again to hear some more conversations as we continue to dig deeper and figure out solutions and ways to get us to equality. So thank you so much. And I wanted to give a special thanks to Creatively, which is the platform that we'll be using. It's an amazing platform, an amazing team. Greg, the CEO, Stacey Bendit, the co-founder, Michelle Rudin, the whole team there is just an amazing team. And everyone is in good hands on that platform. So I really encourage you to go and join today. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it. Everyone have a good evening. Wishing you wellness, warmth, and good health. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.